Are we going to record this meeting in case we need to go back and check out comments and want to take a re-listen to it?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
And you guys can hear me, right?
Yes. Hi,
Okay,
Esmeralda.
perfect. Hi, Steve. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Well, I can't see you yet. Are you doing video tonight or no?
I will. I'm just trying to get to my destination right now.
Oh, yeah. I hear you. Esmeralda, are we tonight as well?
What?
Are we expecting Miguel Arias and Mike Carbasi?
I know Miguel had something else come up, but Mike said that he would join us.
Okay.
Just to do a quick mic check. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, Shelby, you sounded good.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Are folks still joining in? I know that there's quite a bit already on, but are folks still joining on?
There's 36 people in attendance, so I'm not sure if people are still joining, but I would assume they probably still be.
Hey, Steve, what time do you want to get started? Should we give people like a few minutes to kind of trickle in?
I would give people 2 more minutes, Esmeralda.
Just an FYI, I started this at about 5:20 and people were connecting as soon as I started it, so.
Oh, okay. Well, it's entirely up to you, but
I think 2 minutes is fine. We'll get started in 2 minutes. I'm good with that.
okay. Right before we start, is there a place where there are a chance for questions and answers? Is that inside of the chat room, or is there a different function for that this evening?
Steve, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A and there's already 2 questions sitting in there. So you should be able to click on Q&A and see the questions as a panelist.
Oh, okay.
Steve, and then what we did, And what we did last time as well, after we had the presentation, we did allow folks to chime in an orderly fashion. We asked them to raise their hand, and then we can call them as they raise their hand to make a quick, 2-minute comment or question.
Phone, I see the chat room and the participants. I don't see a Q&A.
It should be at the bottom of your screen. Are you on a phone or on the computer?
Yes. I'm on a phone.
It may not show on a phone. I've never tried it on a phone, but
Okay.
It shows on the phone. Look at the very top, boss, right next to where it says the leave button. It should say play.
Thanks, Robert. Yep, it's on the top.
cool. I'm not used to being a phone person on one of these things, so I didn't know where it was. Sorry about that, Steve.
Hey, you even learned something new.
Yes.
Imagine that. You can teach an old dog a new trick.
I think she was talking to me.
No, I'm the one that just had a birthday last week, so I feel it. I just turned 52, so.
I was talking to Gavin because he's the IT expert. He even learned something new today.
Right?
The question is, will I remember it more than an hour or so down the road? That's the question.
I guess we should get started, Esmeralda. Why don't you get us started?
Yep, so we'll go ahead and get started. I want to welcome everyone to the Palm Avenue Bikeway joint meeting with the County of Fresno. I want to thank Supervisor Steve Brandel, my former colleague, for agreeing to host this joint meeting and in an opportunity to work together to build the Palm Avenue Bikeway to build it in a complete fashion. I do want to just, for those that don't know that have joined us in this meeting, the city of Fresno was ranked #1 in the grant for a protected quick build bike lane. And we received $1.4 million in state funding to create this protected bike lane from the Belmont area to the Dakota. That is the city portion. What we know is that there's already an existing bike lane starting North Shaw on Palm Avenue. And when I saw this opportunity to work with the County of Fresno, I reached out to our supervisor to ask them whether there was a willingness, the county, to work with us to ensure that there wasn't a gap between Dakota and the south part of Shaw in building the complete bike lane that could lead us directly to the San Joaquin River, which I think is an exciting part. This would be the longest stretch of bike lane in the city of Fresno. And so I'm excited to be able to welcome our supervisor. I want to acknowledge the staff. We do have an agenda for tonight. And I don't know if Councilmember Carbasi, who represents the District 2, the northern part, I'm not sure if he's on yet. He did say he would chime in this evening. But we do have an agenda. After me, Supervisor Steve Brandel will give some introductory remarks. Then we will have the City of Fresno present an overview of the project that has been funded. And then we will pass it on to our Fresno County Public Works staff, who will talk about the county portion. And what this meeting is about is, one, to get input. I know that we've had a previous meeting where we got a tremendous amount of valuable positive input, and it helped us be successful in attaining the state funding. And so we want to continue the input process for the final completion of this bikeway. And after that, we'll have some closing remarks, but there is an opportunity to give your input and to give questions tonight. And just everyone, thank you for joining us. And I appreciate the work that has already been done. And I look forward to hopefully making this really a great project between the city and the county. And with that, I will pass it over to Supervisor Steve Brandel.
All right. Thanks, Esmeralda. Your energy is contagious. And I would like to say thank you for approaching the county now several months ago when you first brought this concept to us. The city of Fresno was going after a grant at that time. It looked like the county might be going after a grant as well, but we kind of missed the window of opportunity. But there's still a way for the county to be involved and to create a bike lane on Palm Avenue. So we've talked about that, you and I personally, and then our staffs together several times now have got to make sure that we're all on the same page. And so I think it's been great working with the city, and I hope we can pull something off. I would add that I'm here tonight because, Esmeralda, as you know, one of the things that I said is that I would have to hear from the citizens that represent the county, the citizens that I should say that live in the county. And so I really need to hear from that group of folks that live along Old Fig Garden, either side of the street. None of that matters to me. But if you live in that vicinity where the county owns Palm Avenue from roughly Shaw Avenue south to Dakota, if you live in that stretch of the neighborhood, when you speak tonight or you ask a question, if you could please identify yourself, that'd be very helpful. I know that the city has already had a community meeting. I'm glad that we're joining tonight and having a joint meeting. It's going to be very important for me to hear from those particular citizens. I don't mind hearing from the activists and the advocates for biking either. It's always good to hear from them, but it will be a special indicator to me on what the people who live in the neighborhood will be saying tonight. So I'm here with my staff to take notes. We have also the Public Works Department from the city of Fresno, Steve White, John Thompson, and Bernard Jimenez. And these three gentlemen and myself and my staff have talked about this many times. And I'll probably, after the city of Fresno makes a presentation, I'll probably ask for a few minutes for Steve White to talk about what he sees on the project on Palm Avenue. And so after tonight's meeting, we'll probably be able to reconvene and look at all the notes that we've taken and decide where we're going to go moving forward. But thanks to everybody who's taking time out of their evening to be a part of tonight's community meeting. Thank you.
All right. Well, good evening. My name is Scott Mosier, and have the pleasure of serving as Public Works Director for the City of Fresno. And we wanted to share with you all about some things the City of Fresno is doing. And then, of course, as Supervisor Brandow, Councilwoman Soria had shared, really with an opportunity for a complete corridor on Palm Avenue. So just big picture, what about bike lanes? The city of Fresno does have an adopted complete street policy where we look for opportunities for each street to include not just for vehicle traffic, we'll also transit for cycling and of course pedestrians. We have a master trail plan, bike plan, and in the new developing areas, every street has, as it's developed, those have bike lanes, they have center turn lanes. And one thing that our active transportation plan, the community, our city council, our mayor, what we've looked at is opportunities to increase bicycle facilities and more complete streets in the city. So this is a presentation. I'm going to ask our incredible grants administrator, Shelby McNabb, to walk through this presentation and share with you about this exciting project. And as Councilwoman Soria had shared, we did score #1 statewide on this grant application. Shelby?
Great, thank you, Scott. So I'm going to give a little bit of background on this project and provide an update, and then we'll pivot over to the opportunity to connect this route from downtown to the San Joaquin River in partnership with Fresno County. What we applied for was funding from the Quick Build program, and as Councilwoman Soria mentioned, we are recommended for funding for $1.4 million. This is the first year that the program has been offered from the California Transportation Commission. They released the call for projects in March, and we're really looking for the ability to rapidly install facilities that would improve safety and help folks to be more active. And the city of Fresno selected a project to install a Class 4 bikeway. And you'll see in the image on the screen what a Class 4 looks like. There are flexible posts, a buffered striping area, and then you'll see the cyclists have a little bit more room in between traffic, unlike a traditional bike lane. So Class 4, generally it's a protected bikeway and there's a vertical barrier. The quick build locations that we submitted for funding are Palm from Dakota to H and Belmont from Palm to Blackstone. Tonight's meeting is primarily focused on Palm. And a little bit of additional background, we were so successful in our grant proposal because of the level of community engagement that was done to really demonstrate support for the project. We held a community meeting, you'll see the screenshot there, and we also distributed a survey that had 376 respondents. Of those respondents, 73% of them lived or worked within a half mile of the project area, and 70% of survey responses reported that they'd like to see a bike lane on Palm from Dakota to Shaw in the county of Fresno. We had asked a question at that time because we'd been working with our county colleagues to see how we could install facilities to make that connection for the full length of Palm. So in July, we had the community meeting, we evaluated the surveys, and we submitted the proposal for funding. And then in September, we were notified that we had received the funding and scored #1 statewide. I just want to pause and celebrate that because this is a true community effort and unprecedented. And so thanks to everyone's input and support and enthusiasm and media articles, every post and tweet and all those things, those really matter. I'm able to use those to demonstrate support for the project. So you'll see that we scored well. This will go to the California Transportation Commission later this month to make it official, but we are recommended as #1 statewide. So where are we now? As of October, we've started to do some field survey work so that we can get the actual dimensions. I'm going to move the video screen there. We'll have the California Transportation Commission adopting the formal recommendations. And we're here to discuss the county connectivity. This community meeting really wants to collect your feedback. You'll see on the map on the slide that we have a protected bikeway, which is what was funded in the blue down there south on Palm. The green area represents the distance in the county of Fresno from Dakota to Shaw that we're discussing this evening. And then from Shaw up to the San Joaquin River, we have existing bike lanes already installed. So how can we get bike facilities from downtown to San Joaquin River? We really want to get the community input. I can't emphasize that enough. But I do want to turn it over to the county if they'd like to speak to the different types of facilities that could be considered. I don't know if this would be Steve, if you want to take the remaining slides or if you'd like me to go over them.
You know, Shelby, why don't you continue? You're doing a good job. Great. And then when you're done, I'll throw in a few comments. Sounds good.
So some of the options that may work for this area in the county would be a Class 2 bike lane. And those are defined by pavement striping and signage used to allocate a portion of the roadway for exclusive bicycle travel. Bike lanes are one-way facilities on either side of the roadway. And the images on this slide demonstrate a project we recently did on Sierra. You'll see in the before picture, there were 4 travel lanes and no bike facilities. But we were able to repave the roadway, and at that time we restriped so that you'll see a parking lane, a bike lane, a travel lane, and then the center turn lane. So we reduced the number of travel lanes, installed the center turn lane, and that allowed us to have room for bike lanes and for parking on that route.
And Shelby, I wanted to add briefly on this, looking at the photo. There actually have been national studies done all over the country looking at data and looking at road safety even apart from the bike lane topic, just about converting a 4-lane undivided, like the photo on the left of how Sierra was, to the situation on the right with the center turn lane. Looking at the photo on the left, for everyone who's in our community meeting tonight, you look at the red vehicle approaching us. You know, if they decide, well, I want to make a left turn mid-block, I'm going into a driveway, what have you, that car, many of you been in that situation, of course, on Palm, you're in that car, you're going to stop, put the turn signal on, and then the traffic coming up behind you has to merge over and go into the outside lane. And depending upon how busy it is, you know, that can cause backups in traffic. And unfortunately, that does occasionally result in rear end accidents when someone's not expecting someone to be stopped behind them. So the studies, all the traffic studies, safety studies have found actually that center turn lane really improves flow quite a bit. And this is not half the capacity of the other roadway. And depending upon how many left turns are made, oftentimes this 3-lane configuration will actually operate as well or even better on some roadways. Shelby?
Yeah, thank you for elaborating on that, Scott. So you'll see, again, the before and after. Another option for bike facilities are class 3, and those are bike routes, where routes are designated for bicycle travel, but the improvements are usually limited to bike route signs, as well as at times pavement markings to demonstrate that these routes are recommended for cyclists, but there is not any additional striping typically associated with those bike routes. Scott, do you have anything you want to add to class 3?
Oh, no, nothing else. You're doing great, Shelby.
All right. So this takes us back to your input. I want to open it up at this time, turn it over to our elected officials to discuss and hear comments and questions to see how we can best fill in that green area in the county from Dakota to Shaw.
Steve, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll make a few initial comments, Esmeralda. So when Esmeralda first approached me, she talked about the plan that she had for the city portion of this project. And I think that's why they applied for the grant, because it's a more costly version of a bike lane. It's called a class 4. And Shelby showed it in one of the very first slides. It has a protected bike lane where the bike lane is closest to the curb or the sidewalk. And then you have a barrier, and then you have parked cars, an area for parked cars, and then traffic lane begins. In the county, we felt like this projected concept took up too much space as far as the width of the road. And there's a couple of areas in the county portion that are narrower where we felt like that might be a problem. So then we started thinking, how can we still be a part of connectivity, but not necessarily take up that much of our auto lane, our overall street width. And so that's when we landed on either class 2 or class 3. And I'll be very interested in what the community chooses between those two options. Now, if there was massive demand for a class 4, I'm here to represent my constituents. But I would say that our Public Works Department does not recommend it due to the amount of width that it would take up out of Palm. So let's go to a class 2 real quick. And then I think that there are some slides that will show this as well. A couple of them that we've gone over already. So a class 2 is just like a class 4, except the layout of the street is different. It does demand what's called a road diet. So a class 2 will remove one car traffic lane in each direction and add the center left turn lane as Scott just described. Okay, so you lose a lane of traffic, but you add a center left turn lane, which does even out some of that. So it's not like you just completely lose, because people that want to make the left turn lane, they still have a place to go and they don't hold up traffic. So that part is good. So you would reduce overall the amount of street of Palm dedicated to cars, and you would add a bike lane next to the parked vehicle. So if somebody has a house there, they'd still be able to park their vehicle, their guests, their company, the mailman could still park their vehicle there. And then there would be a bike lane and then the traffic lane. So I hope I did that justice. There's some descriptions of that. That's a class 2. The county will consider a class 2. We believe we can squeeze it in, although I am going to ask our Public Works Director, Steve White, to comment on this, because for tonight, I need everybody to know the facts in front of them so that when they help us make this decision, they know that there's pros and cons to each part of each decision we make. The other option is a class 3. I'll be real quick with a class 3. A class 3 does not take away any auto traffic lanes. They would stay 2 lanes each direction. Palm would function pretty much like it does now, but it would be called a shared bike lane. In other words, bikes would share the right lane with traffic. And there would be signage to let the auto traffic know that they are sharing the road with bicycles. And California state law says that they have to give the bicyclist 3 feet of distance between them and the bicyclist. So it really favors the bicyclist that's on the road. Of course, you and I both know that that is not quite the same as a bike lane, certainly not a protected bike lane. But it is an option that's called a class 3, and you would not lose any auto traffic. Palm would function pretty much the way it does today. But we would still have cyclists sharing Palm Avenue for this 1.5 mile stretch between Shaw and Dakota. So those are the options that we are looking at in the county. And I would like Steve White, if he can jump on here for a couple of minutes, describe. I have to bring him to the table kicking and screaming a little bit because he shares with me numbers where he believes it's difficult to do much of this on Palm. And I want you to hear that. And we will, we'll take direction from the community, but I want you to hear what Steve says about the impacts to Palm.
Thank you, Supervisor. Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Isaac. Good evening, Scott and Shelby and council member. Great to be here tonight. We've got many opportunities. I came from a local city that I work with Scott very closely on over in Clovis. So I have a lot of experience, road diets, bike lanes, bike master plans, and like. We're currently in the middle of doing our bike master plan, and we're integrating all these kind of comments. The county is a rural county for the most part, except for our 11 county islands in the metro area or unincorporated cities throughout. So typically we're going to have bike lanes, class 2s on Friant. We're building our first class 1 bike lane out at one of our parks in Lost Lake along the river. So the concerns that I'm going to represent tonight can be managed and mitigated, because Scott did mention the study that's the design professionals. I wear one of the hats as a road commissioner in the county, as a public works and planning and director and the like. So we're built a little differently than the city of Fresno. We're a fully integrated department. So having said that, a lot of years of experience. So the message tonight is we're going to listen. We're going to listen to what the constituent want. I've been reading the comments coming back from the chats and the questions and the answers, and I agree with many of your comments and concerns. Anytime you try and narrow a lane, the phobia and the concern is you can't push the traffic there. The practical reality is that traffic will adjust and move to other roads. Today, the traffic on Palm Avenue is somewhere in the mid-teens, but with the pandemic, it's been slowed down. So there's really not going to be great accurate counts. We can project from our numbers all the way back to 2013, we had about 14,000 trips. But when we did the traffic calming device at Ashland and Van Ness, we ran into about 20,000 trips on Van Ness and 20,000 trips on Palm. They were pretty much balanced, a 2-lane road and a 4-lane road. So either a class 2 or a class 3 can be made to work here. And what we want to hear is, what do you want? We'll work with the supervisor, we'll work with Scott and Shelby and the rest of Scott's team to come up with a game plan. But I must represent traffic. When it finds congestion, will defer to the neighborhoods, and that's our concern. And we're particularly focused with the neighborhood called Fig Garden, because one of the biggest complaints we have in our offices is speeding and traffic going into the local neighborhoods and local streets. We can't stop that. It's all public right of way. But what we've got to do is listen to what the neighbors want and then work out the details. We're in a little different situation, which we're in a much better position to adapt, but we need your feedback. We have an active project out there right now. They just finished off some underground utilities working with the city of Fresno, but we got an active construction project. The exhibit you're seeing, which shows Class 2 on Sierra Avenue, we are going to be moving forward and repaving Palm Avenue from Shaw all the way down to the tracks or Dakota there. So we can put a stripe on the ground. If the decision to go Class 2 is, we will produce in a couple of weeks exhibits, give them to the supervisor, then share them with Scott, that you can share with your executive team to determine what's going to be the best option. But all of that's premised on what the feedback from the public is. Now, it's counterintuitive when you think you can move as much traffic down 2 lanes that you move down 4 lanes. But from the previous photo and the red car and the one there before, it's actually truth. We did many road diets in Clovis, but it takes a while for people to adapt. And I'm not arguing for or against a road diet. I believe we can do a Class 2, that's where we go, on Palm Avenue without doing a road diet, and also be able to keep parking. But we have to verify that, because on an overlay project, you typically don't do detailed survey work. What we want to do here is try and make it work the best for everybody. So with that, I'll limit my comments back to anything else that we need to do. And the studies that Scott's referring to, I've read, I'm very familiar with. I somewhat agree, but it's a traveling public in the island areas that I have a pause on. Now I've been working at the county of Fresno a little over 4 years. I don't know if all those facts are going to be the same as it would be in an urbanized city, because you're mixing rural in with urban. And that's kind of what I view as Fig Garden, as an urban-rural hybrid interface. So we would have to do some more studies, adapt, and then see what the direction is going to be. The left turn lane, continuous left turn lane down the median, will give you a better accident stats, because Scott is correct. There's a lot of accidents that occur when somebody stops in the number 1 lane and tries to make a turn, because that blocks the same lane they're in, whereas a continuous left turn used properly can be made to work pretty effectively. So there's pros and cons of both directions. So with that, I'll turn it back over to the supervisor.
Well, thank you, Steve. And I was done with my comments as well, so I'll turn it over to Esmeralda.
Thank you, Supervisor Brandau, and also to, Public Works Director for the county, Steve White. I appreciate, at least the openness. I know that from day one when I reached out to you, Supervisor, you were very open to hearing about the project, and that was big for me, because I know kind of the history in terms of kind of bike lanes on some streets, and so I very much I'm appreciative of you guys having an open mind. I know that we have received a tremendous amount of input from city folks, and even though you are county and you do represent Fig Garden. Parts of the city still fall within, the county, who also would utilize this amenity. So what I want to do right now, I want to provide folks the opportunity from the community, because that's what the supervisor wanted to hear. He wanted to hear, people had the positive or negative feedback, and even questions that may be answered. So what we'll do, we'll go ahead, and I know that people already have their hand up. If you are interested in speaking, we'll go ahead and take your name by order. We will start off with Andrew. We'll unmute you. I think we have to unmute you. I don't know if you can unmute yourself, but I'll go ahead and there you go.
Esmeralda, they have to unmute themselves. We'll allow them to speak, and then they unmute themselves.
Okay, perfect. And so if you can just introduce yourself, and then you'll have a couple minutes to either provide questions and comments, and then after we take the live questions, if the questions from the chat haven't been answered, we will go back to those questions or comments from the chat. Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, thanks so much, council members and county representatives. I'm a Tower resident for the last 12 years and have often, for about 5 years, I biked about once a week from Palm and Olive to Knees and Olive, or Knees and Palm. And then often we'll also go out there for Woodward Park. So from Tower up to Woodward Park. And so knowing the route and knowing the way, it's definitely not super safe. And so I had to zigzag back and forth to, find a safe and creative route. So I am very excited about this project. I think it adds so much access for our community. And having had to go up through the county island every time I'd have to go up Van Ness, I think it also adds a lot to that community. So I think there's access points for them to go down to Shields and them to go down to Tower and downtown. So very excited about this. And so good job, city staff, on all your hard work. I would definitely advocate for a class 4. That would be my preference, something that's safer. I have 4 little boys, so I'd love to be able to take my boys knowing it's safe and they have access. A class 3 to me doesn't offer much of anything. It's very dangerous. And so that at least the class 4 or maybe that class 2, that is at least a little more protected. So really, and reduces and slows down traffic. So, but yeah, again, thank you so much for applying and for working on the grant application. So thanks for the time.
Thank you, Andrew. Next, we have Reed. You can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah, I'm a County Island resident north of Shaw, but I work in South Fresno. I don't drive often to bike often to work, but I do drive it, and I have some kids both at home, and I teach, so I have kids at school. And so my kind of comments are generally around safety for children, just as the last caller was mentioning. The space along Palm doesn't have a lot of sidewalks already, and so the danger of having kids like riding on Palm is great, and it's very difficult to cross a Palm to visit friends in Fig Garden. And so I would say that for me, obviously class 4 is awesome to have that cushion for the little ones, but at least the class 2 where you have that middle turn lane would not just help cars enter the community there, but also bikes can use that to turn more safely across Palm, in my opinion, and to access that. And I think that it was brought up about the safety of the existing community within Fig Garden Village, that the new traffic island, or new-ish traffic island on like Ashland and Van Ness, I think has been like a really great addition to that space, and allowing both pedestrians, bicyclists, and cars to navigate that space pretty well. And so I would kind of think that we could incorporate more of those kind of ideas into the county island there to help people get around. But definitely hoping for more space for on the sides for the bikes, and then just whatever can be done around the railroad crossing is, I think that's like the more harrowing part on a bike when it narrows quite a bit and you're going up and down, and so you're slowing down with your kids. So I don't know if we can get a tunnel or anything, but that would be nice too. Thank you.
Thank you, Reed. And so you're from the county island. Thank you. Next, we'll go on to Wendell Stevenson. You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi everyone, and thanks for this meeting. First of all, kudos to Fresno for getting this great grant. That's fantastic. The part of Palm that most needs improvement is precisely the part that the city of Fresno has the money for. I have been riding in Fresno continuously, almost daily for the last 20 years. I commuted from my home in a county island just north of Bullard High School to Fresno City College, where I taught for 20 years. And so I am utterly familiar with all the routes to Fresno City College from where I lived. I avoided Palm from Dakota all the way downtown because it's so dangerous. So I'm hoping that you can do whatever you can to expedite that particular part of it. As far as Palm north of Dakota, it's not as high a priority as far as I'm concerned, but it is a priority. Number 4 pathway would be ideal. And I would like to hear the county explain their objections to it. Mr. White mentioned that they have some objections to it, but he didn't say what they were. From what I can see, there wouldn't be any particular problem with a number 4 bike lane through that area. The only problem might be at Shaw and Palm itself, where it does narrow down, and there tends to be a lot of traffic there, but that also tends to be the most dangerous part of Palm, right there at Palm and Shaw. In general, I've been bike riding in Fresno since I grew up here, and I went to Roosevelt High School in the 60s. And a friend of mine and I were the only 2 people who rode our bikes on a regular basis from our homes to the high school. Fresno has improved tremendously in terms of bikes since those days, but it's still a dangerous place to ride a bike. Palm is dangerous. Van Ness is dangerous. Motorists, Mr. Brandow mentioned the 3-foot law. That is more honored in the breach than in the keeping. I've almost been killed numerous times riding on the streets of Fresno, and that just shouldn't be. And I commend you folks for engaging in this project and trying to push it through. But I'd really like to see the county get strongly on board here. Thanks very much for the meeting.
Thank you, Wendell. Next is Dean Alexander. You can unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Dean Alexander. I've been a long-term Fig Garden resident for 30 years. I'm all for bike lanes. I live on Van Ness Boulevard. However, I am not for dieting Palm Avenue. Palm Avenue, is a very busy street. You diet it, and see what's correct. You're going to have overflow on my street, and on Van Ness Boulevard, we have a lot of walkers. Now I'm going to have more traffic on my street. Also, you're going to impact Maroa. You're going to impact fruit. It's just, I don't think it's a good idea to diet Palm Avenue because of the schools, because of the traffic there, Fig Garden Village. You just got a lot of traffic, and you're going to focus it on other streets and impact my street. And I don't think it's a good idea to diet Palm Avenue.
Thank you, Dean. Next is Anthony Molina.
Good evening. I am the member of the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee for the City of Fresno. And I want to thank Esmeralda Soria and Miguel Arias and Steve Brandow for having this opportunity to comment on this proposed idea. I am, as you may imagine, a bicyclist, and I avoid riding on Palm if I have to, unless I have to. My bicycle route is typically through the Fig Garden area, just because it's a lower traffic stress route. So I would, kind of like to point out that one of the benefits of a low traffic stress route, such as has been proposed, is that it will encourage more people to ride on Palm and away from trafficking with bikes through the neighborhood. It's also a benefit to the Fig Garden homeowner because it will actually have a traffic calming effect for those who have to cross Palm to or get to Ginsburg School, Wawona, Bullard Talent. I live in the city of Fresno, and but my kids went to Bullard Talent. So I know many residents would like to have their kids be able to ride their bikes, walk to school in that area. And the beauty of a class 4 is that it's really kind of designed for age groups 8 through 80. So it makes it safer. So it encourages those interested and concerned bicyclists who would not dare ride on a class 3 or even a class 2 bicycle lane. So it would be a tremendous benefit, especially in Fresno, where our high rates of collisions for especially pedestrians are a big problem. So slowing the road diets will slow the traffic down, calm the traffic. And I would point out that we did have a fatal bicycle collision on Palm Avenue on this segment just north of Dakota a few years ago. So it is extremely dangerous. And I think this is a tremendous opportunity for connectivity. If we are going to have the protected bikeway up to Dakota, in order to be able to make it accessible to the river, to have that connectivity, you really need to put in a low traffic stress connector between those segments. Otherwise, the issue will fail. But this is really the missing link. We have low traffic stress networks. We have in northern Fresno, we have the Sugar Pine Trail connects to the Clovis Trail that will connect hopefully soon to the Midtown Trail. And now with this Palm protected bikeway, this will actually, like I say, provide that low traffic stress missing link that is much needed. And one of the reasons that it got funded is because one of the criteria for funding is that it be transformative. And indeed, a protected bikeway would be transformative because it will get all kinds of people that would not normally ride a bike and will be able to connect downtown to the river. But it's really critical that this segment, I would propose, and I would ask Scott Moser or Shelby about the idea of parking protected class 4 bikeway in that segment. So with that, I'll leave my question to one of the traffic engineers.
Thank you, Dr. Molina. Appreciate your comments and questions. Next is Kyle Lopez Schmidt. You can unmute yourself.
Thank you so much. We've talked before. I live near Palm and Shields. I'm actually in Sal Quintero's district and Soria's district. I bike pretty regularly for commuting, not as much lately since working from home, but I'm kind of a comfortable commuter as far as bicycling. So like I'm comfortable with bike lanes and not protected, but my wife specifically asked, she's in another meeting, to share that like with bicyclists that aren't as comfortable and wanting that extra level of safety, the protected bikeway, the class 4 is really something that goes a step further to making bicycling comfortable for a lot more people. And that's what we want. We want more people to have that accessible. So that's what I would recommend. I bike often, both north through the county to different destinations and south into downtown and Tower District. So use that often. The most dangerous sections, I think, of Palm are Shields to Clinton, where it's more narrow, and there's also the hill, so the visibility is not as good, and a lot of fast traffic with there being 2 lanes both ways. So excited about the road diet through there. I think it's also dangerous towards the south end of Belmont, where Producers is, and a lot of the truck traffic. And hopefully we really get a network of protected bike lanes around that facility as well. And that's what I would hope for. As far as the county, where I think this is a really good of doing a road diet and having protected bikeways, is like there's not as good lighting through the county stretch. And so having a horizontal boundary will reflect off of people's lights a lot better. So like nighttime has a higher level of safety, and a lot of traffic that turns out of Fig Garden area there's not as much visibility because there'll be like shrubs all the way to the corner. So there being that bike lane a little bit more that a car can come out and have visibility to bicyclists without entering the roadway really makes that a lot more safer. So I'd recommend that. Really excited about the developments throughout this neighborhood, like the home key funding for the smugglers becoming Crossroads Village. My company is working on another one at Blackstone and Shaw that will hopefully be a lot of a good connecting of housing with these other amenities for multimodal. So thank you.
Thank you, Kyle. Next, we have Carolyn Hodge. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you have a couple minutes. Go ahead, Carolyn. We can't hear you. You're unmuted, but we can't hear you, Carolyn. Why don't we come back to you, Carolyn? We'll go next to Tony Pings. You want to go ahead and unmute yourself, Tony?
Yes, thank you for having it. Thank you for having this particular gathering. I appreciate it. I wanted to go over a couple of things of importance. The area did have a Caltrans study. It was a $350,000 study that went on for well over a year. We did look at Palm Avenue. We did look at the maps throughout the area as part of an overall macro approach. And they actually did not move forward with road dieting along Palm based on the actual engineering data that we had, and we had traffic studies at the time. I heard generalities related to the traffic studies. I would like to see the traffic studies. Steve, especially Steve White as supervisor, I'd like to actually see those traffic studies because I have them from before in the Caltrans work, and it didn't support the concept of going to less than the 4 lanes at the time. I'd like to see what has changed. That's important for us to understand the effects on the area. We also had worked on our bike paths and our pedestrian areas, and it sounds like you've updated them without input from the county portion. We'd certainly like to see this throughout our area and see what the city's current belief is that would be. We want to open our area in Fig Garden. I'm a lifelong Fig Garden individual. I've lived in the actual core area or the adjacent area. When I say core, I mean within the actual area of Fig Garden my entire life. And so I have a great deal of expertise in that area. I'm very concerned about the setting and how we bring bicycles through our area and pedestrians. We want to work interactively to make sure that that's a positive event. The other question I'd like you to answer, is this currently funded under that grant, or is the county portion not under that grant's funding? We also have an identified serious problem at Palm and Ashland that we've been working on to try to get funding to correct that. That's adjacent to school, Powers Ginsburg School, which is a very dangerous situation because we don't have proper pedestrian access. I think putting bikes in that area without addressing that would be a very bad idea. We need to correct that intersection before we really make any changes on that street because that's an important part of that that's been left out for quite some time. I am a little disappointed that you're this far into it and that this is the first that we have heard about this. I am a member of the Fig Garden Homeowners Association. I am on the board. And while we had worked on this for a number of decades, this particular proposal had not come to us. So I am disappointed in that, but we want to engage with you and find the right way to bring the bike paths through our area. And I want to reiterate that we want to open our area to both pedestrian and biking in an appropriate way. And would hope that you'd be able to provide us more information so that we can make an informed decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, for your comments and your questions. Just so that you know, in the current grant, it doesn't include the county portion. That is why we are having a conversation, because we would love for the county to be a partner and hopefully build out the remaining of the bike path. I don't know if Steve or the supervisor or Steve White wants to answer to the question related to the Palm and Ashland Avenue, the infrastructure that is needed for the pedestrians, for the kids there. I don't know if there's anything in the works there.
Well, Councilmember, let me jump in. This is Steve White again. Thank you for the opportunity. Tony, we have the grant awarded for the traffic signal at Palm and Ashland. As you know, the process is evolutionary, sometimes it's slow, but once we get to the point, we plan on bringing back the geometrics to Supervisor Brandau's office and give it to both the board, the Fig Garden board, and you'll be copied on that with Dean and show you what we're talking about. It'll be a phased signal that will allow for the pedestrian crossing safer, because that is an accident with a lot of left turning movement incidents. So we're probably a year out before we'll be able to get the signal on the ground, but don't quote me on the timing. I will get back to Supervisor tomorrow so we can get it back to you.
And then as well, I will add a portion of an answer there as well. Tony, we will commit to getting you our traffic studies and our traffic plans and compare those with the Caltrans study that you referenced. Maybe we could line up a meeting early next week. Get our tomorrow's Friday. Maybe we can get our materials together and we can compare what's changed as far as traffic, or maybe what's not changed, and we can just go from there. But I would say I do empathize with folks who feel like they didn't know about this. Quite honestly, this grant proposal and the grant opportunity came up very quickly. The city of Fresno jumped on it and told the county about it as soon as possible. Unfortunately, the county is not involved in the grant. We can find a way of striping Palm Avenue. If it's just a matter of striping, we can find a way of doing that. As Steve White referenced, that the street is going to get a repaving project in anyway. So in reality, it's kind of the right time to restripe it if we're going to restripe it. But we are absolutely not a part of the grant that the city applied for. And so we give them props. They did a great job. They were working up against the wire, and Shelby and Esmeralda and Jill and everybody over there and Scott were doing great work, and they got awarded. And I think they got first place in all of the state for a transformative proposal there. So the county is not a part of that grant, but we're looking, and I would say that when Esmeralda first came to me, we kind of chuckled because, as my good friend Tony Molina knows, I haven't probably been the bike activist best friend over the years, but I've always had reasons for decisions I've made. On this particular Palm Avenue, I hate giving up a car lane, but the concept of creating connectivity from downtown to the San Joaquin River, that is also valuable. And so I turned to Esmeralda and I said, hey, you've got me very interested. This connectivity issue is big. It deserves, it deserves my time. And so we're really looking at it, and we hope we can do something. Having mentioned that it connects with the San Joaquin River, Esmeralda, I don't know if you mind, but I would like to introduce John Shelton from the San Joaquin River Conservancy. He's the executive director, and he's here on the meeting, and he would like to make a few comments, if you don't mind, and then we could get right back into questions, answers. We won't skip anybody.
Go ahead.
So John, if you can unmute yourself. I don't see him, Esmeralda. Maybe he's already jumped off. I was trying to intercept him before he had to go.
Oh, yeah. I think because it was 62 just about a minute ago, he might have.
He might have had
But
to jump.
if he comes back on, we'll let him speak. But he did make some comments in the previous community meeting that we had.
Okay.
So, okay, so let's continue on. Appreciate your comments, Supervisor. Next is George Snyder. If you can go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you for having me. I live on Palm Avenue. I live just north of Ashland, so I am in the county right in the middle of that section that's under discussion. Unless I'm confused, it seems to me that the question of whether the road diet is going to be done or not is not on the table. It seemed like it's already been approved. All we're trying to do is decide the class of the bike lane. So if that's true, then the one question I have is whatever class is chosen, is it going to be consistent from one section all the way down? And we're not going to jump from one section of class 2, one class, another section of class 3, et cetera. And also, we get a lot of fire trucks and ambulances, and I'm just kind of curious about how the emergency vehicles would be affected by this change to 2 lanes. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, George. We appreciate your questions. Shelby, can you maybe talk about the type of bike lanes that would be going on the city? And then, we haven't decided in terms on the county, but we can also mention what exists north of Shaw, because I think that's the point. It's the point of connecting city, county into the north part of Shaw.
I'm actually going to defer to Scott Mosier to describe those in detail.
Okay, thank you. Scott.
All right. Just to recap, so north of Shaw, for the vast majority, there are bike lanes, just what we call class 2 striped bike lanes on Palm, all the way up. And currently, there's not a plan with the city to make any changes with that. Definitely there is some width up in the Palm Bluffs area north of Herndon that could pretty easily accommodate a class 4 and not even remove any travel lanes. But that's kind of a future thing. We may look to enhance that. Of course, Dakota to the south, that's where the grant has been awarded to the city for that class 4 and that road diet. So just to recap, really the kind of the focus tonight is not under the city's jurisdiction, but really with the county from Dakota to Shaw. It's great news for the community that the street will be repaved, and it's a great opportunity to decide, does it go back exactly like it has been for many years? Is there room to skinny up some lanes, add bike lanes, or look at the road diet that puts in that center turn lane for safety and adds bike lanes on the street?
Thank you. I think John Shelton joined us back again. If you wanted to unmute yourself, I know that Supervisor Brandow spoke to the opportunity to connecting the river. I don't know if you wanted to say a few words, John. Do you want to unmute yourself? Okay, if not, we'll go on to the next person. We'll come back to John. Thomas, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself, you're next.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
So I'm a bike commuter that lives in Tower near Belmont in San Pablo, and I ride north to Spano Park here from Tower.
Ooh, do you have both your phone and your computer on? Just because it's echoey.
I guess I do.
Now we can't hear you.
Can you hear me now? Oh, still got that echo. Sorry, guys.
You can't have more than one device in a geographic area. So if you've got more than one device, please turn the other one off. Or if you're watching it on YouTube or watching it on CMAC or anything else, you can't have more than one audio signal.
We'll come back to you, Thomas. Next is David.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, hello. Thank you for having me. I live right on Palm, literally one block from the Ashland intersection. And my concern definitely is, has there been a traffic study done? Because I mean, traffic in the mornings and sometimes late afternoons from Ashland going north, is backed up, 10, 15, 20 cars deep. And if you narrow that down to a single lane, you're going to have traffic backed up all the way to Gettysburg. And then how is that going to be any benefit to anybody that lives along Palm? We're going to have just a heck of a time being able to get out of our driveways, and access to the street is just going to be, I can't even imagine what a mess that would make. And to me, I could be wrong, but I see just the potential for even more, maybe less major, but I see potential for many minor accidents, fender benders and stuff, with people being backed up all the way towards the Well Church, that during Sunday services creates quite a bit of traffic. I just don't quite see the justification of narrowing a busy road down to 2 lanes. And I'd like somebody to really let me know if, the traffic study, whether that's been done, because that seems very important before this project would even start.
Thank you, David. I don't know if Steve or Scott, any of you guys.
This is Scott Moser. I'll just speak for the city's jurisdiction. We did perform a traffic study. We actually took what we call peak hour, rush hour traffic counts at all the major intersections in the city. So locations like Palm and Shields, Clinton, Olive, Belmont, and had to confirm, okay, is that going to work? So we actually took counts, meaning how many people are making left turns, through movements, right turns, and the cross streets as well. That all got modeled in a software program. It's called Synchro, does a really good job, and found the intersections, they would work acceptably well. That we only did a traffic study for the city. The question about how would things go at, say, Palm and Ashland, Palm and Gettysburg, I'd defer to my colleague, Steve White, for feedback and input. I know Steve's team has been looking at that as well.
So this is Steve. Following up Scott's comments, we have not performed any studies. That's why we're waiting to see what direction we're going to go before we put our resources. We're stretched pretty thin, as you well know, with all the stuff up the hill in the Creek fire. But if directed by supervisor, we'll put the team together and move forward with it. But to the last commenter's comments, we're also very concerned. And before we do anything, we follow the very implicit guidelines that are set forth by the FHWA safety program. And we'll go through that decision matrix, do the traffic studies, share them. It's all transparency. But we don't have that information right now. We're here to listen, and we're here to take direction from the supervisor in tomorrow's discussion we're going to have with them.
Next, Thomas, let's see if you're now able to do it without the echo.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
So I'm a bike commuter that lives in Tower, and I go north near Palm, but I don't take Palm very often because of the 40 to 50 mile per hour traffic. So I end up having to go through the neighborhoods there, which currently, like along Van Ness, it's mostly used by people walking and whatnot. It's a nice ride, but it seems like class 4 bike lane would be a lot more pleasant for everyone, so the walkers can have the neighborhood, bicyclists can have their own space to travel north and south. And I guess my other question was, are you guys familiar with like the trade-offs with unprotected bike lanes versus protected ones? Because from what I've seen, there's a study that was done at PSU that shows that protected bike lanes and separated bikeways have a much higher rate of utilization, so it gets more people out using them. And would it be worth removing a whole traffic lane if it turns out people don't want to ride right next to cars going 40, 50 miles per hour without some sort of barrier?
Thank you for your comments and questions. Does anyone want to chime in? I don't know about, I know that the traffic engineers know more about those studies. And I think that that's one of the reasons we as a city moved forward with a protected bike lane. And in this opportunity with the quick build, because what we wanted to see is also the utilization, right? And then if we see the utilization really increase, we would make it permanent. Is that right, Scott? Kind of the logic?
Yes, Councilmember Soria. I'd like to ask Jill Gormley to speak to that a little bit. Jill headed up our active transportation plan, and turns out it was very interesting about people's comfort level between those types of bike facilities. So I'm going to ask Jill to chime in. Lots of community outreach on that.
Yeah, good evening. As Scott said, when we completed our active transportation study for the city of Fresno in 2017, we got a lot of feedback from the community on the different types of bike facilities and the different types of riders that are using them. The class 4, as you can see, has an extra level of protection or comfort, if you will, for the different types of riders, the riders that are families, kids, not necessarily the riders that are, riding to, riding lots of miles every day. This is a bike facility that might cater and be more attractive to riders that are families or on their way to school, riding their bikes to work. They call them fearless or more cautious types of riders. I think Tony Molina mentioned our level of stress on roadways, and that equates to the types of riders that are actually willing to use the roadways, if not able to use the roadways.
Thank you for that. Next, we have Laura. If you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi. Thank you for having me. I'm a County Island resident and I use my bike pretty regularly. I used to go down Palm to City College quite regularly. Not anymore. I could never have imagined taking my bike because the road is just very unsafe. Honestly, in the discussion about the bike trail, while I really much support the idea of having a class 4 bike trail and alternatively, if that's the only option, a class 2 bike trail, the most dangerous situations on Palm I've had because people were trying to turn into the neighborhood and they were waiting for traffic to open up on the other side. And this created a couple of situations where there were nearly fender benders. So having a middle turn lane, I think, would improve the safety on Palm for cars tremendously. And having a bike lane would really create the needed connectivity between North and South Fresno. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Appreciate your comments. Next, we have Brian. You want to unmute yourself, Brian?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I lived in Fresno for about 20 years. I'm from there originally. I live in Minneapolis right now. And the reason I'm chiming in is because we have about an equal percentage of class 2 and class 4 bike lanes here in Minneapolis. I ride a lot. I ride about 3,000 miles a year, so quite a bit. And I don't think there's any comparison between the two. I will go far out of my way to ride in a class 4 bike lane to where I'm going versus a class 2 bike lane. I think a class 2 bike lane, there's so many safety issues with it. And even people who ride a lot, I think vastly prefer class 4 bike lanes. And I think that you're going to see that they're going to use the class 4 bike lanes, even when class 2 bike lanes are available and might be a more direct route or a shorter route to where they're going. And so I think that you should definitely look more towards a class 4 bike lane, even if that causes a road diet or possible traffic or traffic having to go on other streets. As someone who uses class 4 bike lanes all the time, the safety level is just so much higher when you're separated from that traffic with some kind of barrier that I think that that's something that the city of Fresno really needs to look into.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it. Claire, you want to go ahead and mute yourself?
Hi, I live a block away from Dakota, which has a road diet. And so I had a couple of observations. I was wondering if there were any kind of post-diet traffic studies, because I know when the road diet on Dakota was first put in, it was surprising to see, the backup of traffic. But what has also been interesting is that over time, a lot of that has resolved. And I think that people have chosen to go along Shields, along Ashland. Some have stayed on Dakota. And that having that protected lane of having to make the left turn into the street that I live on is so much preferable rather than having to, be out there in the middle of the lane with your blinker and hoping that the person behind you really does slow down. So that's one of my comments about the road diet thing. And I think there are a number of them around town. And so we can look at the data to see, is there a higher number of incidents of fender benders and accidents because of people backing up? That data might be available. I also wanted to speak to the idea that there's no comparison between the class numbers. A class 4 is just so much more reassuring to bicycle in, that I think it really does lead to the terms that a number of you, Dr. Molina and others, have used about connectivity and making the trail system in Fresno leading to the connectivity and the transformative quality of it. I don't think that we can really predict. We can't say, well, this is how things are and this is how they will continue to be. When you have a class 4 lane, it changes the way people in the neighborhood get out with their kids and their bikes. It changes how people go to school. It changes what people do with recreational time. It is transformative. And so I just hope very much that Fresno keeps moving in this direction. I hope they get the Midtown Trail done. These could all hook up together, and it would be a very good thing for us as a city. Thank you.
Claire. Next, John Shelton, you want to unmute yourself?
Hey, it's working now. Sorry about the confusion earlier. My computer wasn't showing the unmute, even though I pretty much knew where it was at. In any case, so I'm the executive officer for the San Joaquin River Conservancy, to hopefully where this trail will end up at the river. We just had Steve Brandow is one of my board members, and so he's aware of this, and Mike Kerbasi is another one, and he's aware. We just approved at our board level to go ahead with our River West projects, which starts at Palm and Knees area and goes along the river to Highway 41. We're estimating around $10 million worth of grant funding to put in parking lots and to continue the Eaton Trail, a paved multi-purpose trail that'll go from Palm and Knees to Woodward Park. So being able to join South and Central Fresno up to the park along Palm Avenue is right on time. It's going to take us a couple years to get our project together, and I think it's going to take the city and the county a little bit of time to get this together, and there will be a very good place to go to. I did also want to mention that historically, I'm a City of Fresno resident, but historically I lived further south. I lived at Shields and Maroa and used to ride Palm Avenue to get up to Woodward Park and to ride out Friant. And I would usually avoid Palm Avenue because of the dangers there. But also as a driver, I still go through that area, and I very much appreciate the left turn lane. I think it makes it much easier. My business down in that area usually is to visit. There's some relatives of my wife that lived in the area, and doing a left turn off of 2 lanes is dangerous at times. So it's kind of nice. So that's what I had, unless anybody had any questions for the Conservancy and the Parkway.
Thank you, John. Appreciate you for chiming in and for joining us in the last city meeting. Thank you. Next, we have Kendall. You want to unmute yourself?
Hi, I'll be riding home from downtown to my house that's north of the train tracks right off of Palm in just a little bit. I won't be taking Palm, especially since it's night now because it's so dangerous. I do have lights, but I end up having to take side streets, which takes me longer time and more effort. I did already write some comments in the Q&A, so I won't repeat those. I'm glad Anthony Molina made that comment about the cyclist that was hit. It was right near my house. I must have gotten 10 messages from people who were asking if it was me. Thankfully, it was not. He was killed. Ashland and Palm has a lot of accidents at it. I think that's probably been shown by the any traffic studies and the reason for the new sequence of lights that's going in. I hear drivers going extremely fast. It tends to be a lot of motorcycles, but it's especially at night. I think it's because at those times, it's a very low traffic volume and wide street. Whatever would calm traffic in that area would be all good with me. I'd be in favor of it. So that, along with my Q&A comments, I appreciate your giving me the opportunity to speak to you.
Thank you, Kendall. Appreciate you chiming in. Next, we have Connie. You want to unmute yourself?
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, a couple things. I ride occasionally, or quite a bit, I guess, around town. And a lot of times people will say to me, oh, I'd love to do that too, but I'm afraid of the traffic. So, and from what I've heard about the studies about the different ridership, depending on the class of bike lane, it seems to me that the class 4 is the way to go if we're serious about wanting to get people out on their bikes. I also have a question about the class 4 bike lane. Would that also have the center turning lane? Would that, or was that just with the class 2? I got a little confused about that.
Okay, we'll have our Scott Mosier, or I don't know who else would speak to that, at least on the city side.
This is Scott Mosier. So within the city, it would have a center two-way left turn lane for almost the entire length from Dakota down to Belmont. Actually, it goes even a little bit further down to H Street. So there would be that center two-way left turn lane in that area. Between Dakota and Shaw, that would really be, again, up to the county. The question is, could the lanes be narrowed a little bit and then have room for a class 4 and a center two-way left turn lane? From what we've looked at in the city, we would tend to say it could fit. But I think the county, you're hearing some county feedback. There's a stronger desire that if there's a road diet, I think, I don't want to speak for Steve on this, but it would be class 2. Couple factors in there. Class 4, it does involve shifting the parking, on-street parking. They don't park right along the curb line anymore, but the protected bike lane's right along the curb. So the parking comes out between the bike lane and the traffic. There's a little more maintenance to do with a class 4 ongoing. The city's more than willing to do that in our jurisdiction, south of Dakota. We'll stripe parking tees along the street, and then there are the posts that you saw in the photos that we'd maintain. But I think first question, is it with a two-way left turn lane? Yes, it would be.
Okay, next we'll go to John. You want to unmute yourself, John?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
All right, so a couple of comments that I had. So it sounds like the county is seeking feedback from county residents. I guess I should first clarify that I live in Tower District, so I'm within the city. But it sounds like county representatives are seeking feedback from county residents about their support or opposition to a bike lane through the county area. And the only opposition that I'm hearing from county residents, it seems like, is the thought that this bike lane would increase traffic congestion in the area. And then the opposition to the bike lane because of a feeling of increased traffic, is used as justification for not doing a traffic study within the county. So I would just maybe suggest or ask that it seems like a traffic study within the county is really needed to be done to overcome any opposition to the project. And if a formal traffic study has been done in the city area and it's been shown a proof of concept, I would think that obviously there's going to be some differences in traffic patterns, but given the proximity, that there would be feasibility for the project there. And then one other question that I had, so starting out with the presentation, the county was suggesting a class 2 or class 3 bike lane only, and was not, did not think that the county area would support a class 4 bike lane. And one clarification I had, the only difference between a class 2 and a class 4 is that a class 4 is protected, whereas a class 2 is not. But a class 2 and a class 4 could both support parking. Am I right? So it sounds like there would be space potentially for a class 4 within the county area that would also support parking.
Thank you for your comments. I don't know if Steve White, if you want to, or Supervisor, if you want to chime in.
This is Esmeralda, it's Steve Brandow, and I'm gonna jump in real quick on a couple of different things, because there has been some questions asked in the question and answer section of the Zoom meeting, and then there's also been a couple in the that have come across in our last probably 5 or 6 speakers. So let me just talk about class 4 just for a second. The city, and by the way, I value all these folks all the way up to Shields Avenue are my constituents, but most of them, 90% of them, have Esmeralda as their representative in the city. And they've already made the decision to do the class 4. So the last speaker was correct, and I am specifically trying to get the input tonight from those that live in the county island. There's been a great survey that's gone out to the other citizens, and they've responded, and I have access to that survey. And now I want to get the input from the county island folks. That doesn't disqualify anybody else's opinion. Let me say this about the class 4. It's the county's staff, not my personal opinion, but the county staff believes that the car travel lanes, if we take out the traffic lane and we add the middle left turn lane, I think all of us can do the math. That means we're actually losing just 1 lane of traffic as far as width goes. Okay, so however, that gets quickly consumed by the protected bike lane on both sides of the street. And it forces the remaining 3 traffic lanes, the one that goes each direction and the middle lane, are too narrow to make it so narrow that it makes it uncomfortable for us. So Scott alluded to that in his last answer. I think there's probably some sections in the city portion where they're going to have to get very creative for that same reason. So it's not that, I mean, if that street was 10 feet wider, I think we have a different discussion. But right now, we are considering taking away traffic lanes. We don't also want to put the squeeze on the lanes that are remaining. I hope folks can understand that. The other comment that I'll make about the class 4, it's not like if we don't do class 4 in this 1.5 miles of the county section, we're ruining the project. Because honestly, right across the street from us on Shaw, where Councilmember Carbasi, his district begins, and it goes all the way to the San Joaquin River, several miles, and that's all class 2 over there. And there's no proposal to convert that to class 4 that I've been told about. So we're not trying to be a pain in the butt about class 4, we just believe that it's going to consume too much width of the street. That's one of our main concerns. And there is a little bit more width. It doesn't seem like much. When you add that protected little barrier, it might only be 2 feet on each side of the street, but that's 4 feet total, and that puts a crunch on that street. So I hope I answered some of those questions. I believe Steve White, if he has anything to add, I might have messed that up. I'm not 100%, but we talked about this several times. That was one of our main concerns. So thank you.
Yeah, and what I'll add to it, I think that having even just the county on board right now to do the class 2 lane, I think provides us an opportunity to really see, right, the utilization. And, you know, hopefully we will see that we have positive results with the protected bike lane. And we don't know, the future may allow us to hopefully bring some additional resources. As Scott mentioned, in north part of the Shaw area, there's enough space to do a protected bike lane. And so if there is an opportunity there for a later project, but I think that the opportunity that exists there is to create how much of a stretch and mile of bike lane that connects the south part of the city to the river, which I think that's the phenomenal part of being able to create a bike lane of that length. What would be the length, Scott, in terms of miles?
From Councilmember, from Belmont all the way to the river. We'll have to do some math here, but that, I believe that's close to 7 miles.
Yeah, so that's pretty remarkable that we could say that the city of Fresno has a stretch of, 7 miles, continuous 7 miles of a bike path, and a third of that would be protected, which is an exciting piece. I think I saw one additional person raise their hand. John, did you want to say one more comment? You want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I would just, I appreciate the response. I bike a fair amount, but I'm also a driver, and I used to commute from Palm and McKinley up to Palm and Nees before my office moved downtown. And I would definitely be frustrated if I was driving every day and I got stuck at, say, Gettysburg and Palm, and I had to sit through 3 traffic lights. Nobody wants that. I mean, even as an advocate for the bicycle community, that's not what we want. But in the response that I just heard, it's the opinion of the county that removing a bike lane will potentially increase traffic, and they believe that it would squeeze drivers. But as an engineer, I like to look at the data, so I would just say that it would be good to have studies that back up, that show that we could either make this work or that it doesn't work. And I think it seems like that would be the next logical step in this process, to make sure that either the project works or it doesn't work for the space that's allowed in, or that's provided in the county area on Palm. And I would say, regardless whether we talk about a class 2 or a class 4, at the very very least, I think that we can all agree that there should be striping for a bike lane for class 3. I mean, there's so much space, you wouldn't have to do any road diet or anything. At least put a stripe on the road for a bike lane there. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And there were several comments and questions posed on the Q&A, which we appreciate. Let me see. Supervisor, I don't know if we need to read any of these out loud, or if you felt.
I've been answering the ones that I can answer. And then there's some that I can't answer. And so then there's a couple more directed more towards the city. So I don't want to speak for the city, but.
And I know Scott was answering some of them. Scott, I know that we do have a little bit of experience in converting or doing some road diet in the city of Fresno that is to some degree, I think, a similar street to Palm Avenue, which is in the north part of the city. Is that, okay, Sierra. How long ago did you guys do this project, and what has been kind of the results that you guys have received?
Sierra Avenue was repaved in the last year, and I want to just give a lot of credit to our county counterparts, to Supervisor Brandow and to my fellow director Steve White. Looked at the data, looked at the traffic. Sierra has a fair amount less traffic than Palm. The street is shared between the city and the county, and we partnered together, and that's done. It's either just been done or about to have been done. A section of Sierra from Palm to Maroa, that's a slurry seal project, and that's being restriped with the bike lane. So that's going great. A good example of a street that's been one of these 3-lane collectors, city, county for years, that has a pretty healthy amount of traffic is Barstow in the Bullard High, Gibson area. Also Gettysburg, we put bike lanes in, did a road diet and improved safety from Blackstone all the way to the Clovis city limit. So that was a good crosstown facility. And I would echo the comments of one of the speakers about Dakota Avenue. Initially when we went from 4-lane down to the 3-lane and added the bike lanes, we got some complaints. And the number one complaint was people who said, well, I'm getting backed up behind another car, I want to pass. And we would typically ask, our staff would ask the question, well, how fast was the car ahead of you going? And usually it was someone going the speed limit, and the person was frustrated. They wanted to move around, but the person was actually going the speed limit. Dakota's kind of settled into a pretty nice equilibrium. So there are others, City of Clovis, Peach Avenue, Armstrong Avenue. And we build them this way brand new in the new growth areas.
Good. There is a question by Brian that was presented not that long ago. It says, it appears that there are portions of off-street bike path already built behind the GB3 and other businesses off of Palm running south. Could that be integrated into the plan, making it so the riders could actually be on an off-street path all the way to Herndon? I'm not familiar with that, but.
And this is in Councilmember Carbasi's district, north of Shaw. There is an off-street bike path called the Harrison Trail, and that is just north of Herndon, near the frontage road. And that does extend almost all the way to the river, and the last bit of development's going in to install that. The tricky part in the developed part of the city that kind of grew and built up before there was a plan for bike lanes or a plan for trails is where that could go. I've heard suggestions before of something on Van Ness. Could Van Ness has a lot of right of way? Could there be ability to do something on Van Ness in Old Fig, maybe that's similar to Van Ness? Up north of Barstow up to Herndon, there's a nice off-street bike path there. But with Palm, the closest we can get to that is really the Class 4. That's a protected bike lane where you don't have room to actually build a full trail.
A question from Mike from Fig Garden, I guess, or he says Fig Garden. Would the road diet be part of the plan for Palm north of Shaw, where the bike lane currently exists, or is it just for Shaw to Dakota?
The city's plan is only south of Dakota for the road diet. question tonight is how about the county when they repave? North of Shaw, there's not a plan for a road diet, but certainly a city will be looking at ways where we might be able to take a foot out of each travel lane and look to put in the buffer for a class 4. But we really want to pilot it here on Palm. And then I think there's opportunity around the community to improve those and enhance them up to class 4 in many places.
Thomas Klein, are narrower car lanes more effective at reducing actual travel speeds than posted speed limits? It seems that it could be viewed as a traffic calming measure, which could improve safety near Powers Ginsburg Elementary. That's to the Public Works and Engineer folks.
Steve White, do you want to speak to that?
So in my experience with the number of road diets I did when I was in Clovis, they work well sometimes and they don't work well other times, because what Scott stated with regard to speeding, people feel that they should be able to pass and they can't. So road diets are successful if the drivers want to make them successful. They do have a tendency, and the best one I'll point to, I did not have support of the council in Clovis when we did it, was Peach Avenue on the west side of the Buchanan campus, all the way from Herndon. It works really, really well now, but it took a number of years for everybody to get comfortable with driving it. So road diets work, but when the volume of traffic gets up and those drivers that are very aggressive drive, it can cause problems. So it's really coming back down to the nature of the driver. And I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. You have to be very careful of when you put them in, when you don't put them in.
Stephen Bradley, I'm a member of the BPAC committee from District 6. I ride up Palm and definitely feel vulnerable in Palm. I would like to see a type 2 on the county portions. It balances bike and car safety. This overall project not only connects the river, it also connects the Herndon Trail that connects to the Clovis Trail. So no question there, just a comment for you, Supervisor. I think he lives in your district.
That kind of was breaking up there. I didn't hear all of that.
Oh, it was a comment from Stephen Bradley. He says, I'm a member of the city's BPAC committee from District 6. I ride up Palm and definitely feel vulnerable on Palm. I would like to see a type 2 on the county portions. It balances bike and car safety. This overall project not only connects to the river, it also connects to the Herndon Trail that connects into the North End and Clovis Trail.
Definitely, and that's why we're looking at a class 2, although everyone, class 2 would require a road diet. We've heard, some folks concerned about that tonight, but that's why a class 2 is one of our main options. But I agree that it would connect downtown Fresno. We've already talked about the river, but it would connect it to several other trails in the northern part of the city, which could allow people to travel around. And the Herndon Trail was just mentioned. The Herndon Trail effectively goes all the way into Clovis and all the way out to El Paseo Marketplace. So there's a lot of great connectivity that comes from bringing this plan together.
There is a question right now by Reed. It says, would a community education campaign accompany the change in the traffic patterns? I don't know. I don't think that's included, right? Saw as part of our grant.
Yes, Shelby, are you still?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, why don't you speak to that?
Yeah, so we do have included as part of the grant that we would do kind of like a kickoff and do like a collective ride once the facilities were installed. I also wanted to speak to the evaluation components of the project, because we do have evaluation written in to do before, during, and after counts of users. And we're really able to sell this project as a proof of concept, because I know that it includes a lot of change and a different way of doing things in this area. But as a quick build, we're able to install it and see how things turn out, how many people adopt it, and the enthusiasm for it. It sounds like there's a lot of enthusiasm, and then from there, perhaps expand it further. But there is evaluation, and there is like a promotional event in partnership with our elected officials.
Great. So we will be doing some of that to be able to help. And I think it'll be probably good too, as we look at ATP opportunities to do more education just across the board for these areas that are where we're building additional bike lanes, because I think it is important to let folks know about the changes in these traffic patterns. I think that's pretty much it. Supervisor, I want to thank you again for your willingness to, have a joint community meeting to get feedback, both from county and city residents. And I think that, you got a good number of your folks that were able to chime in, if either live or through, questions on the Q&A or comments on the Q&A. So again, I want to thank you and Steve White for joining us this evening and for taking the time and being open to the possibility of really being part of I believe is a transformational project for the city of Fresno that could, just continue to incentivize folks to, ride their bikes and be a healthier neighborhood from north to south. So that's exciting. And I don't know if you want to have any closing remarks. I'll just say thank you to our city staff for their willingness. Thank you to everyone that participated this evening. I think we had, a little bit over 60 folks that chimed in. Thank you for your interest. I know that the supervisor always takes additional comments or questions and, feedback. So if you guys want to reach out to them, but looking forward to working with the county to hopefully get this project connected through the Fig Garden area. Supervisor.
Esmeralda, I'll just say real quick, thank you to everybody who participated tonight. Both the staffs from the city and the county have been doing great behind the scenes work on this. Thank you, Esmeralda, for bringing this to our attention over at the county. And then I want to thank everybody who's filled out a survey or asked a question, irregardless of whether you you want a class 3, a class 2, a no bike lane, a class 4. All of this information really helps, and I really think we're going to get something good done here. I want to thank everybody for their participation tonight. And as you said, Esmeralda, we still have a couple of weeks where we can take more input. There's a survey out now to the county residents, and I just suggest that they grab that survey, even if they participated tonight, and fill out and put in some notes and send it back to us. At any time, you can call us for additional comments and questions and concerns as well. But thanks Esmeralda, for facilitating a great Zoom meeting.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate your time, and you guys have a great evening.